Welcome to the Airiam Podcast. This podcast covers topics related to cyber and human resilience. The content's geared towards owners and CEOs of small and medium-sized companies, as well as IT and cybersecurity leaders. My name's Art Ocain. I'm the field CISO at Airiam. Our episode today will cover resilience and the evolution of AI. In the recent year, AIs like ChatGPT and Bard have trended into popularity. How can business owners and executives start using this technology and secure their own environments? Joining me today is Tim Hetzel. Tim, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Tim Hetzel. I'm a solutions architect with Airiam out of our Midwest region outside of Milwaukee. And I get to work on all aspects of infrastructure and cybersecurity and all the fun stuff in between.
Awesome. So Tim, we ask everyone who joins our podcast, how do you start your day?
Usually with a big cup of coffee and sometimes two. And then usually it's going over our ticket queue and working through backup tickets and, kind of the mundane tasks of the morning.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm a big fan of the jet fuel too. But I've been defaulting to soda lately, so that's shame on me. So what is AI and what different types are commonly used today? This is, something that's been evolving very quickly. Anybody who's been paying attention to kind of the community, the news, ChatGPT, Bard, Bing now has ChatGPT built into it thanks to that Microsoft partnership. There is so much in AI that's coming to the forefront, but we've all been using virtual assistants for a while. I talk to my phone constantly, so Google Assistant is like my life. But there's also Alexa and Siri. Tim, are you using any of those personally to control your life?
I've got Android, so I use the Google Assistant on my phone. Usually it's when my hands are too busy or I can't type fast enough. So it can often transcribe what I need quicker and gives me the results I need. It's definitely come a long way compared to I've got a 2011 Volkswagen car and it has built-in like AI for being able to make phone calls based on voice commands, but half the time it can't understand you. It gets, it doesn't understand the names. So it's definitely come a long way, in the last few years compared to what we used to have.
Absolutely. And I think in the next year or two, we're just going to see it really catapult now that it's really building up momentum and speed. Self-driving cars have been around for a little bit, Tesla, etc. I know when I travel to San Francisco, you're seeing the self-driving kind of taxis, the ride-sharing service. And so that is something that AI has been being used for effectively. And now in the medical industry, we're seeing AI being used to help analyze and identify diseases. But one of the things that we're using AI for that we all have experience with is fraud detection with AI. So, if you're at a fair or something and you scan your credit card and it gets blocked because it's detected as fraud because of some kind of risk factors that it's detecting, whether it's a weird POS system, whether it's a weird payment processor, a weird whatever, AI is identifying an increased risk of fraud and is blocking that transaction. And then you end up having to approve that transaction through your bank. That kind of AI has been being used in the last several years, but is getting more and more refined to identify fraud.
I know I've gotten phone calls on stuff from a bank, and it was stuff they automatically detected, things like the impossible travel. Where
Exactly.
It's like there's a credit card charge from the same card happening multiple states over in a time period that's too short to travel, whether by driving or plane or anything. So it has intelligence to look at things like the location, the type of charges and stuff to flag that. And hopefully, because they have a vested interest in stopping that stuff. Because a lot of the card protection stuff for the user, you're not responsible for fraud.
Mhm.
So the banks and the credit card companies want to put an end to that. So, they're leveraging AI to take advantage of those detections that would be more efficient than having people combing through all the data.
Absolutely. And there are different kinds of AI which they're probably using. I would say that, a bank is probably using what we call machine learning. So they have a large amount of data, and they use it to identify patterns that are linked to fraud, and they're really training an algorithm to detect fraud based on a pattern in data. And then there's other algorithms which might be used, which, like ChatGPT, the natural language processing algorithms, which really can identify human behavior and how people talk in texts, in emails, etc. And that's handy when you're kind of authorizing a wire transfer or something like that, using AI to identify, is this actually this person, or is this person, acting erratically compared to their normal behavior? And there are now some like security email solutions that will identify that kind of fraudulent behavior, scamming you, social engineering, etc., just from the text, reading the text and correlating it with data. The natural language processing algorithms are able to pick up that this is fraud and alert it to you. So there's a ton of products now that are coming to market that are, they have that superpower built in now. So this is where we're going to get really exciting. But it's important to keep in mind that the threat actor also has access to these tools. So,
Yeah.
that the hacker is able to use ChatGPT to craft really convincing social engineering emails that don't look like, fraud. Have you experienced any new, spam or scam emails lately that look even more convincing than ever before?
Yeah, I definitely have. It used to be, I think you could pick those out really easily because it didn't, the person either wasn't a native English speaker or something with the wording sounded a little funny. And so it wouldn't pass the sniff test. Now you have to like be extra cautious
Mhm.
and really, you can't necessarily pick it out by the language anymore. You got to look at some of the other factors in addition to that. So there's not one quick thing to say, oh, this is fraudulent.
Mhm.
Sometimes there might be a malicious link or something like that, but oftentimes they might point back to something that looks legitimate there as well. And it's interesting. I've even seen threats where they're phishing through phone calls because they're trying to using a real person to get you to respond to things so they can actually hear what your voice would be like and recording that, and then
Mhm.
using that to try and pass some of these detections like, okay, what kind of inflections are there within their voice when they're speaking to try and get past some of those fraud detections as well. And
Yeah.
so if you start getting funny phone calls where they're asking you weird questions, it's like, hold on, I'm not going to answer this or respond to it because I don't know who this person is or what they're asking for.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know how familiar you are with deepfake, but there are a ton of video AI that will emulate you off of a series of pictures and look completely realistic. And then there's also audio AI where you can load some samples, and they're using the same kind of engines, the ChatGPT, GPT-4 kind of uh, NLP engines, that you can load some samples of your voice in and then tell it to say something else, and it'll sound completely convincing. So on
Kind of
that
scary.
that exactly, that's really scary. So in fraud and fraud detection now, it's important for us to realize that yes, it's great that this AI is helping us detect things better, but people that are scammers and con artists and hackers and social engineers are able to use these tools convincingly to bypass a lot of our controls. So we need to start thinking as a whole of is this real? Like, you know, and taking those extra steps and precautions to voice verify, call the bank, when you after you get a call and say, hey, I got this call, is this real? That kind of thing. But yeah, another algorithm that's being used in AI really to detect fraud is computer vision algorithms. And I know we've seen a lot of this image recognition. It's really being built into even Google now, where it will identify products, identify people, start tagging stuff, organizing your photo library based on stuff it recognizes. I know AWS created a service which allows you to do kind of the image matching, and people are able to use it very effectively for even facial recognition. And law enforcement agencies were starting to use it, and it was getting a lot of heat in the news because people felt like it was violating their privacy. You walk down the street and some random camera identifies who you are immediately, and then can track your your movements based through the town based on cameras. So computer vision algorithms are able to detect cards, checks, handwriting. They're able to detect anomalies in that, because they're so used to identifying what normal looks like and creating that baseline. So, yeah, it's just right now we're at this kind of inflection point with AI where these technologies that have been starting to be used for the last couple of years are really affecting everything we do and are in every product we use now. So that really brings us to us. When we're doing security and network management and engineering, Tim, have you started using AI in order to improve the security of networks, or have you started thinking about it, or are you seeing new products hit the market regarding using AI for security?
I've seen where you can take set of data and you feed it into the AI and kind of just have it give you suggestions. I haven't taken to the point where you're automating where it just would automatically resolve things or send out responses to end users, but can definitely be helped to process through some of that data and to formulate where, okay, if this is something I want to send to an end user, it'll take a lot of the work out of me having to draft something from scratch. I can use the AI to kind of process through some of that. And so the turnaround time on analyzing things, responding to issues, determining something's a threat can be a lot quicker. And then you just have a human that kind of verifies that before it actually goes forward after that point.
Absolutely. And I know that we're starting to implement some technologies. Our XDR platform, CISO, has some machine learning built into it, so it helps identify network vulnerabilities using that. But we also have a tool in our stack called Horizon 3 Node 0, which we use for continuous pen testing and automated pen testing, and it will build really a list of the vulnerabilities that are most important for you to take care of on the network based on not some CVSS score or some vulnerability scoring system, but based on how the that vulnerability could actually be used to attack the rest of your network and get your control of your network. So it's re-ranking using AI based on what's really most important, and that helps us, Tim and I, figure out how to mitigate those network vulnerabilities, because Horizon 3 will let us know that this is the one that's important and fix this one, and that one may not be ranked a critical. It may just be a
It's
high.
unique to that customer, the specific environment,
Exactly.
because it's not right. It's not just looking at scores. It knows that, okay, this is actually something that in their environment that would pose a greater risk than something in a different environment, let's say.
Yep.
And so it's kind of a combination of different data that's being fed into it rather than just one single score, right?
Yep.
And so you can take something, a team of security engineers and then bring them to that next level because they can respond faster and more intelligently and bring to attention what's most important to focus on for each of these environments.
Yeah, that's important at vulnerability management as well as in responding to attacks. When we're responding to network attacks, there may be a whole lot of things going on. Servers being attacked, networks being attacked. There may be access that's valid access. When you're under attack, it's really hard to tell, is this server being accessed by a legitimate person or the hacker, because you're almost in a distracted phase in that initial incident response. You see a lot going on, you're trying to respond to it accordingly. uh, that AI can help sort what is really an attacker and what's really a legitimate user. And that's one thing I love about using it with network security is uh, when either from a next gen firewall, the IDS system's there, or an XDR platform where it's telling us really how network attacks are being performed by filtering out all the stuff that doesn't matter using AI.
So yeah,
And
there's always a lot of noise within security systems and the amount of logs that are being generated. And it's like, how do I identify what's actually relevant during the moment?
absolutely,
Yeah, and
absolutely.
I know on the EDR side, it's made my job easier because it's learning about the environment, and there might be a DLL or executable that is perfectly normal and safe, but it flags it based on behavioral things, so it knows that, hey, there's something here that looks off from normal patterns. It's interacting with files differently than what it normally would have, or doing something that doesn't quite look right, and because of that learning, it's picked up on that, and it'll flag it to your attention, and there still needs to be human intervention to review that and say, yeah, is this a true alarm or a false alarm? But you can correlate that with other things that are happening at the same time as well, and build kind of like this attack pattern, or um, how it's advanced, if there's an actual incident taking place, that you can see kind of what has happened in a timeline.
Yeah, that's an important thing to bring up. You mentioned really how it's detecting that malicious behavior. Uh, it AI learns based off of data. So if your network has a certain amount of behavior going on, Susie's accessing the file server, John's accessing the sales folder, uh, Bill is accessing Salesforce. There are certain behaviors that people do, and the machine learning and AI learn what is normal and set kind of a baseline, so that when somebody is doing something that is out of the norm, then that triggers an investigation, really. And then it'll compare that behavior against other things that it knows. This is normal kind of threat behavior. This is how a hacker behaves. But it's only looking at things when it's outside of your baseline, which it learns. That's why that machine learning is so important with detection and response. Humans do so many complicated things through the day that we think are complicated, but if you look at it from like a machine learning point of view, we're just opening email, we're just responding to email, we're just having meetings, we're just doing these normal tasks day after day after day after day. So the machine can learn that this is our baseline of normal. And if I'm doing something that's outside of this, then it's a behavior that needs to be looked at. And then, it'll say, okay, you're going to a normal website, that's fine. Or you're running a program which we know is okay, that's fine. But it's really, it starts looking at your behavior once you're outside of that baseline. And that's how it's EDR, endpoint detection and response. Using that AI is so helpful at catching an attacker, and so helpful at stopping malware that may be unique to your environment, by picking up that behavior. And I love
It
that you
has the
mentioned.
ability to like get it detects 0-day threats, where traditional antivirus looks at signature based. Is it something we already know about? But a 0-day would be something that has never been detected, or it's something that is being uh, kind of executed real time, that there isn't a signature to compare against, that
Mhm.
it has to look at behavior to detect that.
Perfect. Yeah, that's important to recognize too. So those of you who are trying to increase the resilience of your organization, recognizing that there are tools out there to help you now, using AI to help you increase your security, help you prevent attacks, things like that. And EDR is one we recommend to everyone. Endpoint detection and response. There's a lot of great companies in the field that do it. So that is something that I think everybody needs to have at this point. So, Tim, I know you're a network guy, and I have a network past also. So I try to stay away from those nightmares as much as possible. But you're living in it more day to day. How do you see AI helping you automate your network config stuff?
Yeah, so it's I was thinking about this. There's a lot of tasks that would be kind of repetitive. It's like, all right, if you're setting up a new system, configuring a new network segment, it's like I need to find an available IP address. Let's say, AI could very easily tackle something like that. Where manually in my head, I'm thinking, okay, I'd go out and I'd check to see, is there any DNS records? Am I scanning the network for available IPs? Is it finding anything that's already in use, just to say, hey, I don't actually manually configure something that's wrong. Whereas AI could process through something like that so much more efficiently and accurately than a human who might go and misconfigure it, and suddenly I've got some conflict on the network. And the AI has, enough, I'm cautious to call it intelligence, but artificial intelligence, right? So it has enough intelligence to say, hey, you actually did configure this incorrectly. There's a conflict on the network. There's something wrong with your network segments. This device is allowed to talk over this one. It really shouldn't. So you can have it structured from a logical, efficient standpoint and avoiding mistakes, and also from a security standpoint as well, using that to refine and review your configurations based on, what it knows from the data that's been fed into it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that, it's going to be helpful for us to validate configs, like you just mentioned. Give it a config that you just did and say, hey, check this for errors. I've seen our techs already using it to improve configs, saying, here's my config. Please tell me how to, improve the security of the VPN, and it'll recommend a different VPN hashing algorithm or a different key, or they'll say, I'm having a problem with Teams or Zoom quality on this network. Can you suggest a reconfiguration?
Like QoS that you could put into that config, and actually
Exactly.
It can save a lot of effort of having to search through like vendor knowledge bases, so it's like, hey, how would I configure a DHCP forwarder, for addresses on this network segment, and you might not be familiar with the specific vendor, but it can go out there and query and spit back configuration, say, yeah, just paste this part in there, and then,
Absolutely.
I always recommend having a human kind of review that, and you say, okay, that looks good, let's test it, but it can save a lot of time and effort of having to review different vendors' knowledge bases and documentation to do something that you might be familiar with, say with Cisco, but not with a Fortinet or Juniper.
I think we can take it even further now. Let's say you have an entry-level tech, somebody we just hired, and you need them to configure this Juniper firewall. They could go into, ChatGPT and ask for configuration, give it the IP, range, give it the net mask, and have it build a base config. And then they could say, okay, we need a VPN to this IP address and IPsec VPN, and have it build the config. And then once that entry level tech has this base config built, they could take it to you for kind of approval and just to double check it. But I think that the amount of acceleration that kind of thing will do for service companies like us that are handling IT, it allows, it shortens that skill gap, where we are right now depending upon engineers like you to be able to do that heavy lifting. Now we can have a more entry-level person do that initial setup and then run it by you, and you make catch something and tell them, okay, next time you write the prompt for AI to do this, tell it to do this also. But I think that's uh, something that we can start using now, and to help start improving our network configuration.
That
And
makes me think of an interesting story about like I can't remember if I read this or heard it somewhere, but it was like a tier one kind of help desk tech without a lot of experience using AI would start getting the responses, satisfaction surveys, and yeah, this solved my issue, you know, feedback from the customers that like a level three tech would have. So it's already boosting the performance of the team because they could leverage the AI for structuring their responses, helping them troubleshoot issues, And so it's taking that from maybe a level one to level three boost, and as far as the customer is concerned, they don't care, they don't necessarily see that. They're getting the responses they need, and they're seeing a higher quality of service.
I think that one of the things that we're probably going to see across the board is quality of service improving because of this, across every industry, anything that has customer service involved with it. So with us, it's IT, it's taking tickets. Now that level one engineer, that entry level person can solve problems like a level three, as long as they know how to interact with AI well. But the same thing can apply to really any business. So small businesses that are out there, and you're worried about really how to, uh, hire the right talent. AI can really kind of help bridge that gap and help you accomplish more with less. So if you have that seasoned employee that's really a bottleneck now, you can hire a more entry-level person and use AI to shore them up and just have them check the work. So it is really opening up that kind of thing for us. And I think for cybersecurity, it allows us to bring in analysts and have them handle such a bigger load. You can give them, an infinite amount of, uh, you know, analyst data, and have AI really do responses and remediation for them if you're able to take the time to figure out what you need. And I think that's the kicker right now. AI just doesn't figure out what it needs on its own. We still need the person to tell AI what to do. But I
It's
think
not going to
that
replace people, right? It's just going to bring that
exactly,
performance to the next level.
exactly. Yeah, I think that it's going to be important for us with, running companies to make sure that our people know how to use AI. And that's something maybe we should start thinking about with our technical teams as well. So as far as reducing costs of network operations, we've talked about really the human factor. I wonder, have you thought about how technology using AI may reduce hardware costs or subscription costs down the road? How things could be more automated so that there's less dependency upon expensive gear.
It was interesting. I hadn't thought about that a whole lot before, but it's I think there's a lot of capability there as far as instead of maybe having to spend money on a specialized piece of hardware that does one thing, you can have something that's more AI driven that might be able to cover multiple different things out of the same platform, right? Or you can
Yep.
go with a virtualized solution, a cloud solution that does this versus a specific piece of hardware, or you're not limited by the capability of the hardware. It can advance as the software advances.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you're looking at, a life cycle that might be longer on some of this stuff for a software-based subscription.
Yep. I think right now all these vendors are charging for everything. And so all the security vendors, everything's very expensive. Network stuff, everything's very expensive. I think it's going to be more democratized as time goes on. Those AI is going to start driving those open source solutions, so that we're going to have more affordable solutions, and things that really need less human intervention and give us more solid network operations. um, yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah, I love that I'm seeing our team start using AI already to help improve security. I think that it's really kind of exciting that we're at the forefront of this. And Tim, is there something that is particularly exciting to you about AI right now, or some way that you're using it personally that is you think is really eye-opening for our audience?
Yeah, I mean, I like it from the standpoint of just the time savings for having to draft up, even an email focused on a specific topic. It can give you the framework for it, or if you need a document for like a network assessment, it can kind of give you a template to follow. And I always take that and say, okay, great, this is my starting point, and then I can review what's there and add to it. But I see it as a big time saver, as
Hmm.
far as, it's that multiplier. I can do twice as much with this tool or 5 times as much with it without spending time on some of the mundane tasks.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's really what we're going to see across the board. And small businesses, up to enterprise, are going to be able to do more with less, able to extend and multiply the force of their team. I'm really excited about that, and what it's going to do to not only network and security configuration for us, but just the quality of service that like our frontline techs are able to give. That is to me amazing, and the fact that that's available now for everybody.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so that was great, Tim. I encourage everybody to subscribe to this podcast on whatever platform you're listening on. New episodes will be typically coming out every other Wednesday. For more information on Airiam, go to www.airiam.com.